Hello, my friends. Now, I wanted to show you, before I go into Scotland, I wanted to show you very quickly where I went in Ireland. And today I will show you the last of my photos that I took when just before I left Ireland because my weeks are not lining up beautifully. So I thought I would do that for you to start with. For those of you who don't know, I am sitting in Scotland, and when you get to my PowerPoint, you'll see where I'm sitting. Um, but when I started in, oh, I don't even know, maybe I can make this just a little bit bigger for you. So when I started in Ireland, I landed in Cork, and Cork, well, if you don't know, is down here. Um, And, I had to wait for roughly 2 weeks before I got my license and before I took off. So that sort of put a stop to where I wanted to go. I really wanted to spend my time going up the whole of the West Coast, but obviously from all the hearts in there, I haven't had the opportunity to do that. So I just have to do that next time. So what I ended up doing when I got the vehicle was headed north. So I headed up this side. I didn't actually go to Limerick. I went through the middle. This is going to annoy me every time I hover over something. It's going to want to show you what the picture is. But Tipperary is up here, and that's where some of my family history is. That's Cashel, where uh, the rock of Cashel was. So I ended up sort of spending some time here, but then I went right up to here. No, I didn't. I went all the way right up to here. And that was where I was staying on the West Coast, looking over the Atlantic, and spent a lot of time in this sort of area. And this is Sligo, which is sort of like a central pivot point for a lot of the roads. So if you're going up north or you're heading west or east, Sligo seemed to be the place where you go, and that's where Drum Mountain was, if you remember. This is Ballina. Okay, so there's still so much over this side that I didn't get to see. But because I'd already booked in the Mill House here in the middle, I had to spend some time over here. But in saying that, I had so much fun, and so heading towards Dublin, I got to see all of those castles, all of those gardens. This is where the Hill of Tara is, and Trim Castle, and the New Grange. This is where a lot of the my time was spent in this central sort of part. And then eventually I made my way back down through this side. Whoops, that's one of the castles I probably didn't talk about. There were so many castles that I saw. Anyway, and I wanted to see and I didn't see because of running out of time. So then ended up coming down here, staying in Lismore. Yay. And then back out from Cork, and I flew from Cork to Edinburgh. And then when I landed in Edinburgh, I had to catch the bus across to Glasgow, where I stayed with my wonderful friends, Andy and Nicola. And you'll see them. I'll show you them to you coming up. And they've joined my site. So if they're watching, I had such an amazing time with them. And Andy is like, he could be an advertisement for everything Scotland. He knows everything about the history. I can't, I'm not going to do it justice. I'm so sorry, Andy. I'm going to try my best. Please forgive me for making any errors. But this is where I'm sitting. I'm actually sitting at the top of Loch Lomond. I came up today, got another car and drove up. It's been that sort of weather on and off all the way up. But anyway, I'm here and I'm going to also try to do a zip around from the west to the east, and then I fly out of Edinburgh on the 16th. So, my reflections for this week. That's me with the Scotty dogs. All the way around Glasgow, there's Scotty dogs. And if those of you who know me well will know that Harry McCleary is one of my favourite books. And so the Scotty dogs are everywhere and decorated in all different ways around Glasgow. One of the things that a lot of the discussion that I had this week, and one thing that hit me really hard in Scotland, is the past. There is so much history here. It is still and I actually wrote down some of the things that it reminded me of when I was thinking about the past. Was there's so many past devastations from especially the English. Sorry, Nikki. And that's my other friend, Nikki, that's English. But the devastation they've caused to, well, not only Scotland, but Ireland. And in fact, when you look at it globally, and many of the paintings and things that you see show the wars and things that the English wrought havoc on the world with. So there's the wrongs they've done, but there's past pride here in Scotland that is so prevalent, and as you know, with the kilts, but also the heritage, the beautiful history that they have of the people that they're so proud of, and there's past religious terror, changes, wars that have occurred, but one of the things that hit me was that this country is moving forward and that they are very proud of where they're going as well as where they've been. Um, I'll talk more about that at the end. Lots of wonderful things happened this week around kindness and thoughtfulness, and I'll tell you some stories around that. You'll see in the photo and probably hear I had a haircut. And sorry, Sal, but the guy did a great job. Not as perfect as my Sal, but it was pretty damn good. And I told him I'm going to connect you together with him. But just even finding the hairdresser was an act of kindness from my wonderful friend, Nicola. And then just trusting your intuition. You know, sometimes when you go to do things, you think, oh, should I do that? Shouldn't I do that? Am I a good judge of character or not? And this trip really showed me that I'm certainly a good judge of character of people that I met on my trip. And I'll show you some of the things that we got to do together. This is Lismore. Last week, you'll remember I left you as I just visited Lismore. So we're in Ireland still. I wanted to show you some of the photos. I've got so many photos. Again, I'm trying to not make them so many, but just pick some special ones out. So that's the castle, and it's privately owned, so we couldn't go in. On the day I was there, there was a market out the front. I think I showed you before. But when you look at the river and also this fountain, for those of you who know Lismore well, that the two things hit me, that the fountain that was in front of Town Hall in Lismore looks a little like that one, and the river, the Richmond River, really looks a lot like the river that flows through Lismore, but it's not called that. I think it's called Blackwater. I think something like that it's called. So for those of you who did watch the WhatsApp, I've given you lots of videos because I think it's easier than showing you lots of photos and trying to write all the words. But here I wanted to, this is before I got my hair cut. Um, just Google does the weirdest things, and you have to wonder what's going on. And it sent me down this tiny little road, like it's like someone's driveway, literally. And then I wound my way up to the top of this mountain and could see the river. So the river that flowed through Lismore and all the way down to this place that I was going, called Yol. It's like Yol. I don't know if that's exactly right. It's spelled Youghal, at the coast. But it was so funny that Google had sent me on a wild goose chase, I thought, and then I got this magnificent photo at the top of this mountain. I also want to just show you that it happens all the time when the sun comes out, that the light is so different here to the light in Australia. And I know everyone knows that already, but when you take photos, it's just so noticeable. Or you're just walking down a path and you see this soft green light that I don't think we have anywhere in Australia. So this time, I've actually put some photos together differently. So anyway, we'll see how it works. So this place was called, oh, I did write this down, Temple Michael Castle. And in the video, you'll see I decided to stop there. It was on the coast. And I thought, oh, sounds like an interesting place to all my friends that are Michael. And when I got there, there was no one um, at all anywhere around. And it was tucked down this tiny little dead end road. But when I went in, it was just a really unusual place. And the light again was shining through the old building, and the graveyards that were beside it were pretty neglected, and the building was pretty neglected. But, it was just one of those things. I sat down and had morning tea and talked to the gravestones, as you do. Then I'm heading right down to Cork now. I'm on my way to fly out, and there were these weird things that just popped up on Google. And one is this bridge that's on the left, which it looks like an Indian bridge, and it looks like a footbridge. But I realized as I ended up having to drive down that road that it's actually a bridge, a car bridge. But there are all these people standing there doing a tour. No idea of the history of it. Weird. And then in the middle of a paddock, there's like this sign that says Kilterra Ogham stones. So they're like standing stones out in the middle of this farmer's paddock, and he's put a fence around them. But you can't really walk across his paddock to see them. But you got to go, oh my God, like how old are these things? And they're just sitting in some man's paddock. Um, and there's signs, and tourists can go there only in Ireland, I think. So then I flew to Scotland, as you can tell. And if you listen to my WhatsApp, you'll hear the bagpipes playing. And these are my wonderful friends. So this is Andy and Nicola. And we went and met with another lady who we met on our Italian tour when we were doing the house tours. Um, Anna is actually lives in England. Um, and I think I'm going to say the Isle of Wight, Anna, if that's not right. I'm so sorry. There's too many islands. But in fact, her sister lives in the next suburb to Andy and Nicola. So she came up to see her sister. And we went for this wonderful walk through a garden that Andy used to work in when he was a young lad, a wee whippersnapper. And as I said, Andy and Nicola took me around with their lovely children. I got to meet two of their children and speak to all three of their children while I was there. And I say children, but they're adults. And we went around Glasgow. So I've got these are some Glasgow photos. The weather was not perfect. We had some good days and some wet. But they've got amazing architecture in Glasgow, which was sort of quite a shock. But that mix of, really old and then modern ugly. So, 70s ugly plain buildings as well. Sorry, Andy, again. But there are some actually really beautiful ones. And then right at the top on the right-hand side is a necropolis. Now, I didn't even really know what a necropolis was, but it's up on this mountain overlooking that church, the cathedral there of Glasgow, I'm going to say. Um, well, I don't know if it's a cathedral, but it's It's a huge church. And right up the top is this incredible cemetery with crypts and these massive monuments to people from the past. So we spent a nice time walking up the hill and down the hill and then had a lovely dinner. We had some really lovely dinners in some pubs. I've been in more pubs this week than I have in my life, I reckon, all put together, and had great times and some really funny times. I'll tell you about one at the end. So this is now I've got these out of order because I don't know why, but we went to a couple of museums. This is the Kelvin Grove Museum. Hope I've got that right, Andy. Um, and the the thing that I noticed about the museums, well, which I don't really spend a lot of time in museums. I tend to be in art galleries, but here there was a mix. There's a mix of museum plus art, but they had giant animals, and then they had an Australian uh, display, and it had this tiny little kangaroo, like a toy kangaroo. I think we need to send them another dead one, which we can find, I'm sure, everywhere. But it was just funny to see this quirky little corner that was Australia. And I saw the funniest little fiddle, which, was interesting. So I've just put some interesting things in that I saw. We went to the Burrell collection, which this guy had like a whole museum in his house, and things from like a, or Dagas, I don't know how you say his name again, painting, to biblical church artifacts that were in perfect condition, through to Chinese vases, glass from all over the world, um, tapestries, everything. And so this guy donated it to the community. And so they've then put it together in Pollock Park, I think it's called. Again, sorry, Andy, if I get these wrong, but they've created like a free museum that you can go in and look at this guy's collection. Incredible statues and um, just an amazing display in a park. So, in a building, obviously in the park. But so art actually came out in different forms, and the painting on the left is by Van Gogh, whatever way you want to say it, and it's of a Scottish lad who stayed with Van Gogh. And originally they thought it was a self-portrait, but they've worked out that it's this guy. And if you want to read any more, you just zoom in and have a look at it. And the other funny thing is, if anyone knows, I love a hairy coo. And so the Highland cows are everywhere, as you know, and I'm looking forward to going and seeing some real ones when I get on the road. But this was just a beautiful painting of the hairy coos. We went to Edinburgh. Weirdly, King Charles was in Holyrood Palace, which is down the bottom of the Royal Mile, and Edinburgh Castle's up the top. If for those of you who don't know, we had a pretty good day. It was like sunny, and it wasn't that windy. It was a bit icy, the wind, but uh, nice weather. We were so lucky. Um, the other thing that hit home again here is this dominant presence of the British and their reluctance to let go of it, I guess, is how I would describe it. Reluctance to let go of their presence. And whether that's a good or bad thing, I don't want to judge that because it's not my part to do that. But it's definitely to see the beef eaters in Edinburgh Castle was just a bit odd, and the changing of the guards and things was prevalent. And then, of course, that's Mary Queen of Scots on the right. And this thread of history, from what I saw in Ireland to England to here, um, and the British presence, I guess the English English interference in other countries' uh, legal and religious structures. That painting down the bottom was a ginormous painting of a battle. And I didn't know that the kilts were worn. I learned that in the battalions, a battalion of soldiers was given a certain coloured kilt. So you could tell which battalion they belonged to. And they wore the kilt, I'm going to say it was up to 1940. And we saw so many different displays. And history of the tenacity of the Scottish. I think they're a lot like the Australians. They like to get in there. Well, they certainly like to drink, I know. So I also want to show you some food. Oh my God. I'm going to do a taste test around the world on carrot cakes. That's what I've decided to try out carrot cakes in as many different places as I can. And my beautiful doctor will know that's not a good idea, but I'm going to try and walk them off as well. Um, on the left, I stayed at a bed and breakfast, and the lady was, I think, from South America. I'm sorry if her name was Millie. Um, and I said, I just have a small breakfast. I'd just like, if I could, eggs and maybe one piece of bacon. And this is what I got: yogurt, fresh fruit, um, so, so much. If I wanted toast, I could have cooked toast. And then she said she couldn't possibly give me eggs and bacon without tomato and mushroom. On in the middle is the carrot cake that we had. I tried that out. I gave it an 8 out of 10. The one, remember, at the little palace, a castle last week, I gave that a 10 out of 10 because of the environment as well as the texture of the cake. So it's still winning. This was an 8, pretty good, excellent company while I was eating the cake, but texture wasn't quite as nice as I like. And on the right, oh my God, I can't remember what it's called. It's called something skink. It's a fish chowder, and oh, it starts with C. Anyway, Andy will tell me, I'm sure, if he wants to write the comments. It's called something skink, and I'm going, you're not serious. It's called, it's a chowder called, like, oh, I wish I could think I didn't write it down. Um, it's got chunks of potato, trout, bacon, and it's really smoky. And I thought, I'm going to give it a go because Andy told me it was the best, and it's right up near where I am. And so I had it for dinner tonight, and it was really lovely. And I had to divide it into two because there was so much in the bowl. So that's just a bit of a story around food. Now, back to Glasgow. And now these are some quirky things that I'll try and remember again as my brain, because it's actually late at night, so about nearly 10 o'clock here. Um, that's the monument to, didn't I write his name down? Oh, cannot remember. On the left is a tree that was hit by lightning, and that tree is from the 1500s. Well, it was probably planted before that because Mary, Queen of Scots, and a guy of Darnell's, Lord Darnell, sat under that tree and had a chat. Possibly they had more than a chat because they actually had a baby, and their baby became James the Sixth of Scotland. I did write that down, and James the First of England. And that's in Glasgow, not far from Andy and Nicola's house. So we went to see that, but unfortunately it was hit by lightning and it's likely to die. It's likely it's not going to survive. But from the 1500s, like, can you believe that? In the middle of a park. And on the right, what is the guy's name? William Wallace. I think that's his name. That's his monument. I was rather disappointed in it. I thought it would have been a bit more glamorous. You know, the Wallace dude that played, I think, Braveheart sort of time. And in the middle is Dunbar Castle, if I've got that right as well. Another castle built right on the top of a rock and just outside of town, just heading out of Glasgow today. That's what I've done. Um, and I've headed up to Loch Lomond, which is the picture on the right that I took on the way. Very hazy, lots of rain, on and off. I'm hopeful that in the next couple of days that I will get some sunlight and get some nice photos. And I might even do a lock cruise if I stay down here and the weather's fine. The other picture on the left was in the bookshop at one of the galleries we went to. It just reminded me again to be creative and keep that creative thread going for all of us. And so I thought I might download some books on creativity and look to do different things. So to finish off for my messages for this week, I decided to talk about conversations. And again, if you don't want to listen to these, I'm really happy if you leave. It's fine by me because this is just my ramblings. And this week it wasn't as clear as it's been in the past, but I had the most amazing things happen. Firstly, just getting my hair cut after I've been going to the same hairdresser, Sal, for over 20 years. Um, I had to go to someone new. And the guy that was doing it was an amazing guy who trains for the Goldwell hair product that is my purple. And so sitting in the hairdressing salon, there was this lovely lady, and she started talking to me, obviously, because I've got a different accent. And you just have the connection. When she left, she said, I hope you have a wonderful trip. And was genuinely interested in what you're doing. And then we were at a pub. We were at a pub, and Pitbull, the singer, was in town having a concert. And what he'd done, he'd given out, or somehow, they had these bald, like swimming caps. All these girls had drawn moustaches and beards on, and they were dressed in like a tie and white shirt, like he does in his music clips. And it was so funny, we didn't work it out. And then one girl yelled out to us when we were looking at them, oh, Pitbull's in town. So we're all dressing up. And he'd given out these little packages for people to wear. So I went up to the bar to buy drinks. I know, unusual, but I did because I would not let those sneaky, sneaky people keep buying me drinks and food. And when I got to the counter, there was a young girl beside me, and she had a very dark moustache and beard and the tie and the bald head. And I said to her, oh, your beard's coming in well. And she said, yeah. She goes, yeah, but my husband, he's trying to decide whether I can keep it or not. And we had a bit of a giggle, and she said, are you from Australia? And I said yes. And then she said that she's got cousins that live there, so maybe I was related to her. And so I then had got my drinks poured, and she paid for them. And she said, oh, that's fine. I said, no, that's going to cost you too much money. She goes, oh no, we've got VIP tickets to Pitbull. And I said, who are you? And it was such a sweet thing for someone to do. And then when they went to leave, she came over and gave me a hug. And you're never going to see that person again. But just the kindness, the thoughtfulness of many people here. And that will be Andy and Nicola and their beautiful boys that I spent time with. There's this kindness in their family, even though Andy's very naughty and annoys his children and they annoy him, you can tell underneath, there's just this genuine affection, I will say, especially also between Andy and Nicola, because he gives her a hard time and she gives him a hard time. But it was lovely to see this beautiful kindness. And I wanted, therefore, to remind you all that if you aren't feeling that you're valuable, or if you're feeling that you aren't worthy, or that you don't value what you're doing, reflect on the other people that you are important to, or think about the people that you could be important to. And whether that's your family or your friends or a stranger, whether it's helping someone, um, we have purpose, and little things that we do can make people's day. That one conversation, that one smile, that one thank you, that one helpful gesture is going to, help someone else. So that's all I have to say for today. I am so excited to be going north, and I've got a full more than another week, and then I'm going to be flying to Switzerland. So lots of Scotland coming up. Who knows what will happen? Hope you've had a great time. Hope your weather's been better than ours. I've been watching it. It looks beautiful in my hometown. So hopefully we'll get some of that here. I will talk to you again next weekend. Lots of love to all of you. Have fun, be good, and I'll talk to you next week. Bye.